Welcome to the latest episode of the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. My name is Hunter Baumgardt, your host. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at HunterBeOnAir. Feel free to like the Facebook page as well, Hunter Baumgardt Sports, and the YouTube channel or the SoundCloud channel. You can watch or listen to the podcast. Whatever works better for you, simply search Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast and feel free to subscribe as well. Today we have Grant Bilse on the show. He's the host of the Wisco Sports Show on WKTY in La Crosse, also the Zone in Madison. Recently his show expanded from not just airing in La Crosse, but also airing in Madison from 4 to 6 each weekday. So we'll talk about that with Grant. Also get his thoughts on the Packers, the Badgers, the Brewers, and some NBA Finals as well. So with no further ado, let's get to Grant Bilse. Joining me this week on the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast is Grant Bilse. He is the host of the Wisco Sports Show. You can hear it on not only on WKTY in La Crosse, but also the Zone in Madison. You can follow him on Twitter at Wisco Grant. And Grant, great to have you on the podcast again. Last time we talked was back in March here on the podcast. Obviously, we've talked together before between then, but it's been, last time we didn't know when sports are coming back, and now sports are back. Has it kind of been sports overload for you, or has it been nice to have sports content to talk about?
Yeah, last time we talked, we didn't know anything. We were so I would love to go back and listen to that interview and listen to some of the points that we made about how we thought the next couple of months were going to go. But sports overload, more sports are always better than less sports because you have more to talk about. But as somebody who tries to watch all this stuff, I think there has been a little bit of overload at times, especially with the NBA Finals. I love the NBA. The NBA is probably my favorite league, but that season took an entire year to wrap up. Like, it took an entire year. I only have so much space in my already small brain. Like, I can't keep track of narratives, and I just can't. It's a long season, and the NBA's got a lot of drama, and there's things you got to keep up on. So that became a little bit tiring. I was glad that the Lakers finally just won it, especially once the Bucks were done. I'm like, all right, let's just wrap this up, get it over with, so then we can focus on football and playoff baseball. Now that the NBA's out of the picture, I've been having a lot of fun just kind of going back and forth between the NFL and the baseball playoffs. Even without fans, they've been pretty exciting and really good. And like right now, at the time we're recording this, the Rays and the Braves might look like the teams in advance. So I would love that. Knock on wood that I don't jinx it on your podcast. But baseball's been exciting, football's been exciting, and I've enjoyed just focusing on those two. As much as I love the NBA, it was nice to kind of check that box and put that league to the side for a couple of months here.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think when any season, we've never had a season of any sport in our lifetime that has gone a full year. I mean, that we just got a taste of what it's like. People are like, oh, the off season's long in this sport, or the off season, it's annoying to have an off season because we love NBA or we love NFL or we love MLB. Well, then when you have a whole year of that sport, it's like, okay, maybe I do kind of like the off season, so then I can get excited for another year. Or I guess we did have an off season because we had like 4 months where it didn't play, but it felt nothing like an off season because we were in the middle of a year. So maybe people can change their minds about that.
Yeah, well, the NBA calendar year-round is pretty busy between the draft and free agency. And then Summer League is a lot of fun, too. It's not as intense. You're not sitting down to watch your team every night, but the NBA keeps you busy year-round. I think maybe what this last year told us is that you need those 3 or 4 months off in the summer to remember how much you miss basketball, right? Like, you need a chance to be without basketball so you realize how much you want it back when it starts. And this last year, it's just been nonstop. Even though we had a couple of months off, we spent those couple of months like doing playoff previews. So it felt like the season was still going because it was, but there were no games. So those couple of months were hardly a break because we were having to try to speculate about playoffs and if they were going to get through COVID. Like, the NBA season this year was it feels like we had 3 or 4 different seasons. And that was really, really exhausting. So as much as I love the NBA, I'm kind of glad that they are done. And now we can focus on fall sports. And it feels pretty normal right now because this is when baseball, the World Series, is typically going on anyways. So that feels normal. And then football's, they're shifting things around, but it's football season right now. So that's nice. It's a little bit more normalcy than it was just a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, and we got Tuesday night football last night, which is it's just strange. And I don't think that's going to be the last time that happens either. I wouldn't be surprised if we get a couple of more weeks where we get that, and you have Monday, Tuesday, Thursday. Except this week there's no Thursday, but in a normal week, if the Chiefs or the Bills wouldn't have been playing on the Tuesday, most likely it would have been Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday,
Yeah.
which is just wild. But also, I want to congratulate you on, I know I mentioned it in the intro, but you are now on the Zone in Madison on your show from 4 to 6 on the Wisco Sports Show. So not only on WKTY in La Crosse, but if you are in Madison, feel free to tune in on the Zone there. What has that been like? What's kind of the reaction been in Madison? Have you been getting more texts and calls maybe from that Madison area? What's that been like so far?
Yeah, it's fun to hear from listeners who enjoy the show, and I've heard from some who don't enjoy it anyways. Anytime you take Jim Rome off the air,
Yeah.
some people are going to be upset. I'm sorry. Like, I like Jim Rome too, but it's fun, I think, to talk Wisconsin sports and to be a little bit more specific, be a little bit more local. And yeah, I've gotten texts and tweets from people in Madison, and I hope to get more, over the next couple of weeks as people kind of hopefully get into the routine of listening to my show. I've had to be a little bit careful though, because I do some very specific things on my show that if you're not familiar with it, maybe you'll land wrong. Like, I'm a really sarcastic guy.
Yeah.
Like, I'll do a 10-minute long bit where I'm being straight up sarcastic. And if you tune in into the middle of that, it might sound like it's not making any sense, because it's not, if you don't know that I'm being sarcastic. So I have to be a little bit careful on doing things that I've done on my show for the last couple of years. But we're also trying to ramp up the Badger talk a little bit. Not that I wouldn't be talking about the Badgers anyways if I was just on in La Crosse, because I'm excited for the Big Ten season to come back. Obviously, there's a lot of extenuating circumstances, and I know Florida just had to shut down their team. So there's a lot swirling around college football, but I'm excited to have Big Ten football back and the Badgers back. I just don't know if I would be talking about it as much if I also wasn't on in Madison. So I'm trying to really challenge myself to learn as much as I can about this team, because I know I'm talking to people that follow this team really, really closely.
Yeah.
So I can't just get on the air every day and talk on my butt and be like, oh, Graham Mertz, a big recruit. Like, everybody knows that, right? I'm talking to huge Badger fans that live in the city and go to the games and follow the team. So I've kind of had to, step my game up a little bit there too, which is good for me, right? I need to be a little bit and watch more college football.
Yeah, and I think, obviously we've talked about this, you and me, before, but like different sections of the state focus on different sports more. Like, like the Bucks, I think, have grown here more, but like you go up to where you're from, and I think the Bucks are even less, paid attention to, and the Brewers are very focused maybe here in La Crosse, but other parts it's not. Like, it just varies by throughout the state. And I think when you're on in different parts of the state, like you said, you need to cater more. As far as the Badgers go, I am curious, what has kind of been your thought on the Badgers? They open on a Friday. Of course they do. For some odd reason, they have to play on a Friday. It's just weird, but it's true. So Camp Randall Stadium against Illinois. What are you, because Jack Cohen's hurt, so it's going to be Graham Mertz to start this season. Are you excited for that? Are you nervous that this team could be worse off because of that? What's kind of your feeling as we head to the Badgers season?
Well, I'm excited to see Graham Mertz play. I think everybody's excited to see Mertz play. He's the number one recruit. He's the biggest recruit that the school has ever had. And we're all hoping, I think, that he can be the best, most dynamic quarterback since Russell Wilson. However many years ago that was. What, about 10 years ago now? I'm not quite sure. So we're all excited for that. It is a bummer for Jack Cohen, though, because I think he was in a position to be a really good quarterback for this team. Now, I think Graham Mertz at his best, whatever that is better than Jack Cohen at his best, but we don't know what Graham Mertz is going to be. We haven't seen him play yet. Yeah. Watching Jack Cohen last year, he was a lot better than most fans want to give him credit for. He was really efficient. He never put his team in a bad spot, and that is so, so important. He didn't throw interceptions. His touchdown to interception ratio, and I don't know it off the top of my head, but basically what the math shook out to is he was throwing an interception about every 1.5 throws per 100. Right? Like, that's really, really good. And It's important for Wisconsin because Wisconsin is really well coached, right? The coaching and the organization and the way that team is built, they are built to win, not necessarily despite who's playing, but I think we see this in high school football a lot too, where a coach establishes a program where they can cycle through different players year in and year out and still win, right? And Wisconsin is in that spot. They don't need a superstar quarterback. They just need a quarterback to execute the offense and to not turn the ball over. So that's going to be Graham Mertz's biggest emphasis, I think, is just doing the easy things and not turning the ball over. Because I think, at least at first, Paul Chryst and company, they've been doing this for a couple of years now, right? They're going to handle a lot of it. They're going to take a lot of that off Graham Mertz's plate. If he can just come in, look comfortable, look efficient, and not turn the ball over, Badgers are going to win a lot of games, right? Now, as the season rolls on and as he gets more comfortable, let's see some of those deep shots that we're hearing about and some other things that maybe we haven't seen from a Badgers quarterback in a while. But at least at first, the game plan with Mertz should be really simple. Just execute the offense, don't turn the ball over, and I think the Badgers will keep on doing what they've been doing for the last few years.
And compete for a Big Ten title, and just compete in every game. That's like you said, that's what they've been doing for how many years now, which has been awesome, because that's all you can ask for, obviously. And a lot of people have knocked on Paul Chryst. He's not the guy that's going to get him to a national championship, right? He maybe gets him to a Rose Bowl, but all of that. What is your feeling on Paul Chryst? I think you like the guy.
Oh, I call him St. Paul. I think Paul Chryst is – I'm not saying he's the best coach in college football. That's not what I'm saying.
Right.
But as far as Wisconsin goes, I think he's just about the perfect coach for Wisconsin. I think he fits this program. I think he fits this team. And he's shown the last couple of years that in big games, that coaching staff steps their game up, right? It happened against Minnesota last year. We were a little bit concerned. Minnesota looked great, and Minnesota won the Axe game 2 years ago, and Paul Chryst and Joe Rudolph and their staff came out and put a brilliant game plan together, showed some things that we hadn't seen all year, right? That's typically happened in bowl games too. I mean, the Badgers win that bowl game. They win the Rose Bowl last year if they just don't have the fumble on their final drive. So
right.
That's something I love about Paul Chryst a lot, is that he steps his game up in big moments and in big games. And I think he's the perfect coach for Wisconsin. That doesn't mean that he's a better coach than Nick Saban or Dabo Swinney, but for where he is, for the team that he has and the state that he has, I think he's shown that he's doing just about as good a job as I think can be done. Can he win them a national championship? Maybe, maybe not, but I don't think that's a Paul Chryst thing. That's a Wisconsin thing. They're in the Big Ten with Ohio State, Michigan. It's a cold Northwest school, right? Wisconsin has some challenges to contending for a national championship that certainly don't have much to do with coaching. I think Paul Chryst is the coach that can lead them to more success than just about anybody else.
That makes sense. Grant Bilse joining us on the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. Almost said on the Wisco Sports Show, which is what you host, but he hosts the Wisco Sports Show on WKTY in La Crosse and the Zone in Madison, 4 to 6 each weekday. Let's get into this into the Green Bay Packers a bit. 4-0. Rodgers playing better than last year. Team has been fun to watch this so far this season. When you were kind of coming into the year, and now you've seen 4 games of this team, what has kind of surprised you the most in your mind as we've seen these 4 games and to where this team might be headed?
Probably Aaron Rodgers. Not that he's playing well. That doesn't surprise me. You know that I'm everyone's an Aaron Rodgers fan. He's a Packer fan, but I think Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks of all time. I think he's the best quarterback I've ever watched. It's not surprising me that they're winning and that he's playing well. It's surprising me that he's playing the way that he is. The last couple of years, I think we have wanted a couple of things as Packers fans. We've wanted Aaron Rodgers to get the ball out quickly. We've wanted him to make the easy throws. We've wanted him to avoid sacks, maybe improve his body language a little bit, just some little nitpicky things. And at age, 36 now, I think he has become the ideal version of himself. This season, he's doing the things that we've wanted him to do for the last couple of years, which I didn't know if that version of Rodgers existed. I thought that maybe we were reserved to watching Rodgers try to scramble and fail, right? Try to run but fail. And I think maybe I expected to watch Aaron Rodgers go down swinging instead of kind of altering the way that he plays a little bit. And this season, he's become the ideal version of himself, and he is fitting beautifully in this Matt LaFleur offense. And it doesn't really seem to matter who the star is every week. We had Aaron Jones one week, Davante Adams, Allen Lazard, and then last week it was Robert Tonyan. So if Aaron Rodgers can just play within the offense as he has been and mix in a few of those special plays that only he can make, it seems like this Packers team is going to win a lot of games. And that's probably the biggest surprise for me is Aaron Rodgers has tweaked his style of play a little bit to be a more efficient, effective version of himself at age 36. Is he age 36?
Yeah.
I got to look it up because I don't want
think
to be
so.
wrong.
I believe it's age 36. I'm almost positive.
Yeah, you got it. He's 36.
Okay.
That would have been a bad look to be so blatantly wrong about it. I just wanted to check. This is a professional podcast we're doing here. I can't be wrong about something.
Exactly. We can't be spreading misinformation. Gosh, nobody does that. Oh my gosh.
The mainstream media.
Right. But yeah, and you talked about the receiving core there, and I'm curious because Davante Adams hopefully will come back this week. Allen Lazard is out for an extended period of time. What do you think? Obviously we saw him be able to spread the ball, especially Tonyan had a great game against the Falcons. But do you think eventually not having the wide receiver depth that we wanted them to have, or not getting that wide receiver in the draft, or not, signing one in free agency, whatever it happened to be, do you think that eventually catches up to the Packers this season?
That's the $1 million question. I mean, it hasn't through the first 4 weeks, right?
Right.
And They are 4-0. Their offenses looked really, really good. But this last weekend, it was tough because I had to watch Chase Claypool ball out. DK Metcalf has been tremendous. Terry McLaurin has been tremendous. Look, a lot has been made about the Packers not getting Brandon Ayuk or Justin Jefferson or Jalen Reagor in the first round. Excuse me. I mean, sure, the Packers could have traded up and taken one of those guys, but what were they supposed to do? Trade up with the Vikings? Like, were the Vikings just supposed to open the door and let the Packers jump them? Like, sure, in a perfect world, maybe they could have got one of those guys. I think they were planning on taking Jordan Love all along. So we can bellyache about Justin Jefferson and Brandon Ayuk all day. But the last 2 weeks, some of those players have been really, really good. I prefer to talk more about DK Metcalf and Terry McLaurin or Chase Claypool because those are players that they a little bit more easily could have had. They wouldn't have had to maneuver quite as much. Those were players available when the Packers were selecting. Will it catch up to them? I'm going to say no if they can stay healthy because I don't think the rest of the NFC is all that good. I think Seattle is the next best team, and Seattle is a goal line stand and a last-second touchdown away from being 3-2. So it could catch up to them, but I'm going to need to see another team in the NFC that makes me worry about the Packers' lack of depth at wide receiver. And so far, I haven't seen one. So no, I will say no. They'll be fine. They'll be fine.
Yeah, and I think that's a good argument to make as far as the NFC goes. And I was thinking about that this morning. I'm like, people are saying, okay, Seahawks or Packers, and some people putting the Seahawks over the Packers, in their whatever it is, whether it be power rankings or just rankings of how they think the NFC is right now. And I'm thinking to myself, Packers have won pretty handily in most of their games so far. I mean, they won by a touchdown over the Saints, but they won handily over the Vikings, handily over the Lions, handily over the Falcons. Meanwhile, like you said, if Cam Newton goes one more yard, they lose that one. If Alexander Madison last week sees the hole on the right side and scores for the Vikings, or if they miss on a couple of those fourth downs, they lose that game. So as far as where they are in the NFC, I think they're the clear number one. And like you said, it's Packers, Seahawks, maybe the Rams, but man, there's a drop off this year. Like the 49ers have dropped off because of some of their injuries, and other teams just aren't doing as well.
Yeah, well, hey, don't sleep on the Rams, right? I know we're only through 4 or 5 games, and I actually don't know how many games the Rams have played because mixing the buys and the COVID.
Yeah, 4-1 maybe. 4-1 might be their record.
Yeah, let's just say through 1 month, how many games the Rams have played. I'd be tempted to put the Rams in my top 3 or 4 teams in the NFC right now.
Yeah,
I think people are sleeping on the Rams just a little bit because Jared Goff seems to have found his stroke again, and Sean McVay, I think he went through his lumps last year, and he's deferred a lot more responsibilities to his coordinators this year, which I think has helped the Rams a lot. I think the Rams are up near the top of the NFC as well. Now, I'm scared of the Seahawks and will always be scared of the Seahawks because it's Russell Wilson, and the Seahawks are – I don't know what it is about that team. That's somewhere that Packers and Vikings fans can agree is just we hate the Seahawks because they win seemingly when they shouldn't. But I'm not scared of the Saints. Right now, I'm not scared of the 49ers. The 49ers are under 500, and they're about to go 7 straight games here against really, really tough opponents. The Packers are 1. They have the Rams twice. They have the Patriots. Wow. I don't have the rest of their schedule in front of me, but they have some tough games. They could be 500 or below, in 4 or 5 more games. So I'm not really scared of the Niners right now. It's the Seahawks and the Packers. And then you can, make an argument for whatever team you think is next. I would argue that it's the Rams. Some people might want to make a case for the Saints or the Bucks, but I think the Rams is my number 3 at this point. Not that we're doing power rankings here, but when we're trying to figure out, who the Packers need to worry about, I think the Rams are right up there, probably higher than just about everybody other than the Seahawks.
Yeah, I think so too. And man, that NFC West continues to be just a very good division. Over the last few years, it's just been constant. Seattle, San Francisco, LA had a little bit of a down year last year, but of course they made it to the Super Bowl 2 years ago. It's just been, and San Francisco represented them in the Super Bowl. So it's just that NFC West has been real, real good. Final question about the Packers, then we'll go into a little baseball as we talked about a little earlier, but a week 5 bye for the Packers, that's early, obviously, in a long, 17-week season. Who knows if they go 18 weeks this year? But, it was one of the earliest planned buys. Of course, we had some other buys because of COVID. But, before the bye, you could kind of see a bunch of injuries starting to pile up. Some not so major, but that injury list heading into that Falcons game was kind of extensive. A lot of starters on it as well. Do you think this bye actually came at a good time for the Packers, or do you think they'll really need it come like week 10, 11, 12? Maybe could have benefited them better.
Well, they might need another bye in week 10 or 11, sure. But, through 5 weeks, Matt LaFleur even said so. This bye ended up kind of coming at the perfect time with all the injuries they had. It allowed them to give another week to Devontae Adams and Kenny Clark. And And during that Falcons game, Hunter, I don't know if you noticed this, but somebody would tweak, Kevin King would tweak the smallest thing, like his shoe comes untied. And Matt LaFleur seemingly was like, all right, we'll shut you down. Like, you take the rest of the bye, exit the game early. Like, just the tiniest little things. And by the end of the game, nobody was left because the Packers were so cautious about everybody, and they still steamrolled the Falcons on that Monday night game. So, yeah, I think Matt LaFleur, maybe more so than Mike McCarthy, is really deliberate about giving guys rest. You see that in the injury report and the practice report every week. A player like Mercedes Lewis, don't practice. You're a veteran. You know what's going on. Just take the day off, right? Matt LaFleur is really deliberate about keeping guys healthy. Last year, the Packers remained just about as healthy as I think I've ever seen them. Now, this year, it seems like the injury bug and some bad luck has hit them, but Matt LaFleur is seemingly doing everything possible to get his team healthy. The early bye helps. They might need another bye, week 11, like you said. Just because this one came at a good time doesn't mean they couldn't also benefit from one, in a couple of weeks. They might have to take a game off at some point anyways. Either somebody on the Packers testing positive, knock on wood, that doesn't happen, although with the way things are in Wisconsin right now, it's certainly a worry. Or maybe, an opponent they play, they have a COVID positive test. So I'm not saying they should plan for another bye week, but from what we've seen through a month, it seems like a possibility. Yeah, they might need another bye, but it certainly timed out well given all the injuries they had, and it allowed them to be pretty cautious in that Monday night game and buy an extra week of rest for a guy like Davante Adams. Meanwhile, the Falcons ran Julio Jones out there, gets hurt, and now they have to shut him down again. So I think the early bye did work out, and I think the coaching staff handled it and coached around it very well.
Yeah, something I just thought of too. I wonder if that Julio Jones thing, aided Dan Quinn being fired as early as he was this season, because obviously, that was headed in that direction, obviously, with how they've started, but also, that decision was interesting. You had literally the same on both sides. You had Julio Jones and you had Davante Adams, and they kept him out. Obviously, Packers are a better team, so they could afford probably to hold Davante Adams out maybe more. But also, you have Calvin Ridley on the other side, who was absolutely shut down by Jair Alexander. So it was kind of an interesting kind of two philosophies there, and one coach ends up getting fired 2 weeks later. But I want to get into a little baseball. Like I said, Grant Bilse joining us on the Hunter Baumgardt Sports Podcast. You can follow him on Twitter at Wisco Grant. Got the new Twitter handle as well, which is fantastic. Except we love Keystroker Grant, so we don't want to retire that.
I miss that handle. I'm gonna miss that. I'm gonna make a burner just to hold on to that handle in case I can come back to it at some point in my life.
Yes, exactly. In case maybe that can be your musician account or something like that.
Exactly.
Let's go. So the Brewers, went out by losing a couple of games to the Dodgers. Went the way we all thought it would in that series. This year, the offense was awful. The pitching showed some promise, though. But do you think that Stearns learned his lesson a bit this season with the offense, that you can't necessarily just bet on a bunch of players with one-year deals that may or may not work out and expect to compete for, they competed for a division title maybe, but, compete for a championship series, compete for a World Series. Do you think Stearns kind of learned something this year?
Well, yeah, but and we rip on David Stearns for being cheap and signing all these no-name players, but I think it all along might have been more ownership, just giving him a small amount of money to work with, right? Stearns, this is what you got, do the best you can. David Stearns might have believed that it was better to get a bunch of random guys and hope that a couple of them hit rather than putting all of his available limited money into one basket, right? Going back, I don't know if David Stearns would do it differently, because I think if your best offseason possible after making the wild card game, if your best offseason possible is Logan Morrison, Justin Smoke, and Brock Holt,
right,
then I can't imagine the amount of resources at his disposal were great. Like, he must have been working with a pretty small check. I think moving forward, yeah, he's probably going to take a different approach. He said so in his press availability at the end of the year. He's like, hey, I got to give it up to my guys because my moves that I made this offseason did not pan out. And they were able to make the postseason anyways, even if it was, even if they were under 500 and, in an expanded postseason, but they were still able to make it. Yeah, I think David Stearns hopefully takes a different approach moving forward. I just hope they spend more money, right? The payroll seems like it's going to be uncertain because of COVID. Okay, that's a convenient excuse, sure. I think the Brewers are in a spot where if they just spend a little bit of money strategically on their offense, that they could straight up be a contender in the National League next year. Because I think their pitching is that good, and I think it's good and ready now. Like, not in 2 or 3 years, I think it's ready now. And I think Brewers fans and the Brewers organization maybe need to have a little bit more of a sense of urgency. Because if you go back to 2018, Hunter, wouldn't you have maybe made 1 or 2 more trades? Wouldn't you maybe have made another move, knowing what we know now? This pitching, the starting rotation between Burns and Woodruff And what they got going on in the pen with Hader, Williams, I think Rasmussen takes another step, and I like Freddie Peralta in the pen too. Their pitching seems ready to go now.
Yeah.
So if they can strategically spend a little bit of money to get a first baseman, a third baseman, maybe make one trade, Lorenzo Cain comes back, Christian Yelich rebounds, hopefully Keston Hiura is better next year. Like, this team could be ready to contend. I just think they need to spend a little bit of money on the offense, and they could be ready to go. I hope they do, but I'm not gonna hold my breath.
Yeah, right. No, neither am I. And they just have holes to fill, and they need to fill them with better players than they did this year. Not every position. You're not going to get, Christian Yelich at every position or Lorenzo Cain at every position, but you need to have, like you said, get maybe one or two more of those guys who can be super solid and consistent, like you had Moose and Grandal.
Yeah, like if we're talking about first baseman, maybe a G-Man Choi, an Eric Thames, a Jesus Aguilar. Oh wait, they had all three of those guys, and they don't anymore. Maybe get one of those three first basemen back. That would be a good first step. Like you said, you don't need to get a stud, a superstar.
Right.
Just get somebody who's better than, I don't know, Justin Smoke. Like that's the standard. Just go above that. And I think the Brewers could be pretty darn good next year. But they need to just put a little bit of effort in to improving their offense.
Yeah, because they got, like you said, they have the pitching. They obviously have the manager, so they're in a good spot as far as that goes. And what do we say we need in the postseason? A lot of it comes down to pitching, so that could work. So you've got like you said earlier, the Rays and the Braves are both leading their series, and what this Dodgers thing has just made me so puzzled. Because I said a couple of months ago on one of my sports map shows was, okay, the Dodgers should win 3 of the next 5 NL pennants and 2 of the next 5 World Series. And it's just because they're so talented. They've spent so much money. They now have Mookie Betts for, the next 100 years. They've got so many players and so many pitchers. And I just cannot believe that this team cannot. I mean, sometimes they make it. Last year, they didn't even make it to the World Series. This year, they might not even make it to the World Series. What is wrong with that team? Do you think Dave Roberts is a problem? Do you think he could get fired? What do you think is going on with the Dodgers?
Well, you know how I feel. Let me ask you a question, Hunter. If Craig Counsell has been managing the Dodgers for the last 5 years, do you think they have a World Series title?
Yeah.
I'm not saying Dave Roberts is the problem, but you've shown that first-year managers, young managers, have been able to do a really good job. Counsell was one of those managers when he was hired. Rocco Baldelli with the Twins, Alex Cora at the time before he knew he was cheating with the Sox. I wouldn't be surprised if the Dodgers make a move. I almost feel like they have to. How do you not luck into a World Series?
Right.
How do you just not fall backward? Like the Lakers were able to do it.
Yeah.
Like the Lakers are just like, oh, we'll get LeBron for no reason, and then AD will demand a trade, and we'll just go win it. Like they kind of fell, backwards into it. I'm surprised the Dodgers haven't been able to. Even if I don't love Dave Roberts as a manager, I don't think he's the problem. But if I was Dodgers ownership, I would maybe explore some options there, because what do? Trade for Bryce Harper? You just traded for Mookie Betts. Like, I don't know if there's that much space to get better. Now, it doesn't help that Clayton Kershaw was scratched last night, and that luck hasn't been great. But you've had the best team now for 5 or 6 years. You can't attribute every year to bad luck. Sure, once or twice, it's hard to win a World Series, but how do you just not luck your way into one? It can't all be on Dave Roberts, but I don't think there's another personnel move to make. Like, you go get Mike Trout. Like, how much better do you need to be before you can compete and win a World Series? So I don't know. I go back and forth. Part of me would really like to see the Dodgers win a World Series, because I would like to see Clayton Kershaw get one. I like Clayton Kershaw. I don't really dislike personally any of the members of this Dodgers team.
Yeah.
However, as a Brewers fan, I kind of got my small market stubbornness where I like to see other teams win that don't have the biggest payrolls. I don't know. I'd be happy either way. Watching the Dodgers lose is fun because I'm a Brewers fan. I also wouldn't mind him, winning one, just because I like Clayton Kershaw. It'd be cool to see him win one. But yeah, I think the manager, maybe some options there to kind of come full circle. I know I hit a lot there, but if Craig Counsell was there, man, it'd be different. It's maybe not Dave Roberts, but Craig Counsell would get him a chip, guaranteed.
It is wild. It is wild to think about that. Like, if Craig Counsell had the talent of the LA Dodgers, if he had a roster like someone, like a team like the Yankees, or that ability to have a roster like the Red Sox, one of those big market teams. Like, he's a small market manager. Like, he's a manager that fits the small market vibe. But like, if he was able to go to a big, oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I would, no doubt, I feel like the Dodgers would have won.
I don't know if Dodgers fans would love it. I think he would come in and do
Right.
some weird, non-traditional things, and I don't think Dodgers fans would like Craig Counsell. I would, if he ends up managing there someday, and I hope he manages the Brewers as long as he's in the league as a manager. But if he were to end up at the Dodgers, I might have to start tuning into LA sports radio because I want to hear what callers have to say about Craig Counsell. Because think of all the creative, weird things he's had to do the last couple of years that Dave Roberts has never even had to ponder. Like, Craig Counsell's got to think, well, I'm starting Gio Gonzalez in the NLCS. What if he only goes 2 innings? What's my plan? Dave Roberts has never had to think about that.
No.
So I think it would be an interesting reaction. Some of the things that Counsell would probably do would maybe be met with some pushback. I think that would be entertaining to watch. But no, I'm not saying fire Dave Roberts. It's not an anti-Dave Roberts thing.
Right.
But what else can you do other than trade for Mike Trout, which I don't really think is on the board.
Right, exactly. And final question for you: a little NBA Finals here. The Lakers beat the Heat, and I know you've been you've been saying some fun things about the Lakers this week, and it's been fun to listen to you. But so on social media, there's been a lot of talk about how the Lakers waited 10 years for a championship. They're so starved. Can you believe it? What do you say to that as a Bucks fan?
I don't know. Can we swear on this podcast? Like I don't know. It's like, I just hate how the rest of the country just panders to this too. Like fan bases who have never won a title, or fan bases who have gone decades without a title, and we play into this. We let the Lakers get away with this crap. Like, 10 years it makes it all the sweeter. Shut up. Like, why do we let Lakers fans get away with this? And I was on this like 2 months ago when the Lakers were trending in that direction, and I knew all this was going to happen. We were going to tip head over heels for the Lakers. Wow, look at their comeback. Look at all the adversity they've gone through in the last 10 years. Look at what they've overcame. The Lakers didn't overcome anything, right? Like, they made terrible decisions in their front office, in their coaching position, in the draft. Like, D'Angelo Russell's an amazing example. They trade him away, and he's an all-star the next day in Brooklyn. Like, the Lakers did nothing but make bad decisions for the last decade. And LeBron goes there because it's LA, and Anthony Davis demands a trade like a baby because LeBron is there. Like, okay, congrats. You guys won a title. I hope you enjoy it. And I hope you enjoy another one that you'll no doubt get within the next decade. Whatever, man. Lakers are different. It's a different situation. Like with the Dodgers. That's why I don't mind seeing the Dodgers lose, right? It's because the Lakers get their title. It's that big market thing. But yeah, it's certainly a far cry from what Bucks fans have had to deal with the last, 40, 50 years.
Yeah, and the only thing that I enjoyed about the Lakers winning was because of Kobe passing away earlier this year, and that'd be one of the only. I'm like, halfway through when you could see the Lakers were one of the best in the NBA. I was like, if the Bucks don't win it, it'd be fine, But the whole thing, they've waited for 10 years for this. It's just hilarious. It's just such a different. In those big markets, it's just so different. It's just such a different mentality. Like, they want to be in it and like. Honestly, like, to be honest, if the Packers win the Super Bowl this year or next year, it'd be the same thing. And we'd be saying, we waited 10 years. Green Bay is still a small market. What's your thought on that? Because that's something I just thought off the top of my head. But if the Packers would win in 10 years, we'd be saying the exact same thing. Now, we'd have Aaron Rodgers for all that time. The Lakers didn't have LeBron James till last year. So that would be a little different. But would that be different if we said the same thing next year or this year if we won the Super Bowl?
It depends on who you asked. If you ask Vikings fans, they would laugh in our face, right, about waiting a full 10 years. I do think the fact that Aaron Rodgers is there for the whole window changes things. Yeah. Because there's this arc of overcoming adversity and trying again and again and again. Whereas LeBron rolled into LA and won a title 3 hours later, and Anthony Davis demands a trade and wins a title 3 hours later. I do think it's a little bit different because Aaron Rodgers wins that early title and then has to go all through different head coaches, different GMs, some turnover on the roster, some bad defenses. So the 10 years thing isn't different. Like, yeah, there would be fans that would laugh in our face about, saying, it's been 10 years. But the overcoming adversity thing is different because Aaron Rodgers going, 10 or 12 years, trying again and again, and finally reaching the summit one more time. Yeah. That's a little bit different than what LeBron or Anthony Davis experienced. So the window of time, not, pretty similar to what the Lakers have dealt with, but the story and the arc of individual players is a little bit different.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Well, Grant, really appreciate the time, joining me after your big show expansion. Now, I wanted to get you on and let people know if you do watch this podcast and you're in Madison, tune in to Grant 4 to 6 each weekday on the Zone there in Madison. Is that is it 1670 and what is there an FM there?
Yeah, 96.7. So
Yes,
the FM
that's what I
is
thought
named
it is.
Lacrosse and is in Madison, 1670 to score, which you can get, like, if you're on the east side of Lacrosse, you can get 1670. So we really got this thing blanketed
Oh,
from the river to central Wisconsin. Yeah. So tune in. It's been fun. I don't know what we're going to talk about until the Packers come back, because I think I've just about beaten all of my Packers takes to death. So we're just waiting
yeah.
for another game. But Badger football and baseball playoffs and stuff like that. It's been a fun week so far.
Yeah, Badger football coming up a week from Friday already, which is crazy. And like you said, Packers, Buccaneers this weekend. Grant, really appreciate the time and talk to you soon.
Hey, thanks, man, Hunter. Anytime.
That is Grant Bilse. You can follow him on Twitter at Wisco Grant, and he's a great follow on Twitter. And you can also listen to him, of course, 4 to 6 each weekday on WKTY in Lacrosse and The Zone in Madison. In WKTY, that's 96.7 FM and 580 AM, 1670 AM, and 96.7 FM in Madison. So feel free to do that. And like he said, the 1670 signal from Madison carries a real long time. So you've got whether you're, as long as you're in that Madison vicinity or even just in the vicinity of Lacrosse and Madison here, you are covered with the Wisco Sports Show. Highly suggest the show, and Grant's a great coworker and friend as well, and interesting perspective on all the different the Packers, the Brewers, the NBA Finals as well. Really, really fun. And of course, the Badgers as well, who start their season a week from Friday, and that means we are going to hopefully talk some Badgers football next week on the podcast. Going to get a Badgers guest next week, and we'll preview the season with them. So looking forward to that. Thanks again to Grant for joining me today. Have a fantastic rest of your week. Stay warm. It's supposed to get chilly, at least here in the La Crosse area, and I'm guessing around the state as well. Keep staying safe as well. And as always, stay positive.